Dyeing yarn with some cheap squirt guns is a lot of fun. However, there's a fair amount of dye left over, and rinsing these squirt guns is a little bit trickier. Thankfully, they sort of leak out of the nozzle, so I can fill them with some water, let it drip out. But I collected a lot of the residual color, and I would like to use that to dye some 100% Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. I'm not sure how much water is currently in this dye bath, but it is cold, and I haven't added any acid to it. What I did do was pre-soak this 100% wool yarn in an, ooh, that's an interesting color. I pre-soaked this 100% wool yarn in some water with 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'll put a link to the original video in the description for this video, but you can see that we've got some cool breaking going on already. See, like a mauve and a green. The colors that we had used initially were a combination of, oh goodness, we had yellow, orange, red, pink, and a turquoise. All right, I'm now going to turn on the heat so we can start trying to absorb this color. And I'm going to see, since I started here, the squirt guns that we were using, put in that little bit, and what can you see? When I poured that little bit of water, you see how the colors rinsed away and that pink was left? That's because this pink, the red number 3s, will bind to wool a lot faster than blues and yellows. And that's one of the things that when you have something that has some of these reds in it, gives you that uneven application even before any heat is applied. 100% wool like this yarn does require more acid than some, oh wow, than some of the other yarns that I dye with. And so what I added just now, because we needed a little more volume anyway, was some of the pre-soak that had the, it was just water with 3 tablespoons of vinegar. So there's still not a ton of vinegar in here necessarily. I wonder how solid or semi-solid we'll end up with. But anyway, at this point, I am going to bring this up to temp. And then I'm going to bring this up to temp, and then we'll see if we start to absorb some color. So I will come back in, I don't know, about 10 minutes. 10 minutes in, and I'm starting to see some bubbles, but there's a lot of color that is in the dye bath, and you can see that we've got this brownish pink that is currently still in our yarn. Now granted, it hasn't been heating for 10 minutes, but since I have some more of this, and I guess it's probably about as full as I can make my pot, but I have just added, you know, since I had some vinegar and some water in here anyway, I decided to go ahead and add that. And I will come back and check on this in, goodness, I guess, you know, I just reduced the temperature again by adding that liquid. So I will come back in another 10 minutes and we will check on this. And again, it's not that this is taking that much more time. There was just very low acid in here, and we started from a cool dye bath. 10 minutes have passed and we are bubbly hot, and let's see how we're doing color wise. There's still a fair amount of blue in there, but it is definitely less opaque than it was. At this stage, I am going to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Generous tablespoons. There we go. Just so that way we could take advantage of all that extra color. The amount of blue that isn't left in there would give a true pastel color. it could be enough to give the barest hue shift to what we currently have in here. So it's really up to you if you want to decide to absorb that last bit or not, but I'm gonna leave this on the low heat for another 5 minutes. Okay, my timer went off, and let's see, yeah, almost all of the dye has cleared. So I would say that we ended up with a really neutral colorway. This has got, it's like brown with little hints of green. And, you know, for starting with low acid, there's a lot of variation, and that is because those reds number 3 strike so fast. Anyway, I'm now going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to let this cool sort of in the pot. There's a hint more of color. It's not really necessary to have all that absorb. I guess it's my personal preference. But otherwise you could remove this right now, let it cool, and then wash it. But I'll come back when it's time to wash the yarn. The yarn is completely cool and the dye bath has cleared, so now we can go wash it. I'm now going to take some cool tap water and just rinse this to remove the vinegar and anything else. But you can see that from this initial addition of water that there is no color bleeding happening here. I like to use a little bit of dish soap because again, sometimes you might not see bleeding from the rinse, but then the soap might cause bleeding. Better you have your bleeding happen when it's better to have the bleeding happen before you finish your project. That way you know what the colors are like, etc. And if you're doing something like color work, you wouldn't want one color to bleed into the other or anything like that. But anyway, I am going to now rinse out the soap and then hang out the yarn to dry. This is why food coloring is awesome. We used food coloring to create these 2 really bright skeins of yarn. And then we created something that was significantly more neutral out of the leftover dye. This final yarn has red and green that interplay to create some really neutral reddish browns and greenish browns, really. And this is something that would work really nicely on its own, but also is like a nice neutral tonal yarn that could be mixed with something else. I don't like wasting leftover dye because even in that tiny bit of color that's left behind, we still got a really great full coverage with a medium level of saturation. And I think that this is just really fun and neutral. Personally, I tend to lean towards some of the more vibrant colors versus something that's more neutral. But I know that there are a lot of people that don't really like bright colors. And this is a great example that you can create more muted, toned down colors with all of these bright food coloring colors. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. That way you won't miss any of the new content that I have coming out. Finally, if you would like to support ChemKnits on a more personal level, check out the ChemKnits Patreon. Patreon is a platform where viewers can support the creators that they enjoy, and you can subscribe and get some really fantastic perks in return that include early access to new content, exclusive behind-the-scenes sneak peeks, and even coupons to my Etsy store. So you can find a link in the video description and iCard, and you should really check it out. Thank you so much for watching.